Good day to everyone. This is the group of biology students tackling about conflict resolution. So our group consists of 3 members: Raiz Rainyo Abdul Karim, that's me, Princess Joanna Buendia Lumakov, and Datu Al Khalil Zimran A. Bin Suwan. So as you can see at the bottom, it says in an educational environment. So why are we focused on exhibiting the conflict resolution techniques on educational environment? Well, the answer is simple because students can relate to it since this is the environment that students are mostly present in. Moreover, it perfectly demonstrates the dynamics of relationships between students to students, and it exhibits the mechanisms of conflict occurrence, conflict resolution, and how minor it is, how simple it is, and most importantly, how to resolve it using different techniques. So a scenario, a film would be presented, and later on we would discuss or break it down into simple parts. What conflict resolution techniques was used, how was it applicable, what is the outcome, and many more. An opening remark for conflicts is that conflict is a constant phenomenon, and the only way that we can, let's say, manage conflict is by resolving it. Although we cannot resolve all of the conflicts in the world, at least we are working on many other conflicts that are constantly and gradually being resolved.
I hope no one will enter this classroom and disturb my work.
The door is locked. Do you have the key?
No,
Should we enter on the other side and don't ask for any permission?
maybe we should.
Let us go. Entering the room without permission is quite reasonable since this task is required for our task. Do you agree?
Yes.
Let's get on with it. Have you prepared the beaker and the vials needed for the reaction?
Yeah,
How about the medicinal droppers?
already done.
Cut that into different pieces and make it look like a hexagonal shape so that it can conform to our project. Now, on this material, fertilizer that we're working on, smell. Stings, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that this would disturb other students prior to this day?
I think no, because we will properly store it.
On what aisle? On this aisle?
Maybe. Yeah.
So that the distance is longer and the smell would dissipate. So, how about the desk that we saw earlier? A strong wind passed through and the paper have flown. So, what do you think we should do? Should we return the paper back to the desk or just leave it on that ground?
Maybe we should.
Should we return it or
Yes.
leave it?
Return it, maybe.
Go ahead and return it.
Maybe I should clean up the materials first and then clean up this mess.
And who touched this paper?
Okay. Let me look. So, let's take this properly. Firstly, this paper was flown by the wind earlier. So we just returned it where it was originally placed. Now, the table that you were saying that is dirty happens to be or happens that you came in at the time where we are just finishing up and cleaning everything. So we're sorry about that, and we know our mistakes, and we're sorry also for entering the room.
No one gave you permission.
Since the schedule of our class is 4 to 5 p.m., so we assume that entering the room would be appropriate and adequate enough since the task that we're performing is for our requirements. So please forgive us for having to interrupt your documents and any other activities in this room. Let's just call it a day and this part. Please.
So just a quick recap on what have happened on the conflict, what have triggered it, and what are the main highlights of the scene or the short video that we have provided. So it begins with a woman or a female student expressing her hope for an uninterrupted work in the classroom. So she ensured this by locking the door, the front door, and left. As soon as the woman left, two male students have entered on the back door, and since there is a required task for them to be performing, they have assumed that the permission to enter is no longer needed since the designated time and the requirement of task already is a credible justification for their action of entering the room. Moving on, as soon as the students, the male students, have conducted their task or project, if you may, they have caused the room to be a bit messy since they are performing something that is complex, and the wind or the natural factors have also interrupted in the room. The strong wind have caused the paper to be flown out. Now that have caused the female student to accuse the two male students to be tampering with her documents. Now the male students have carefully explained what have happened, and the female student have listened to the explanation, and then they have come up onto a settlement and agreed and forgive one another. Since the goal of the presentation is to analyze what were the actions that have conformed to the 14 conflict resolution techniques, here we have compiled them all based on our observation of what was done and what was exhibited, what was displayed on the video. So first is the avoidance of the blame game. The male students didn't blame one another in causing the room to have a bad odor, a messy environment. None of that. They haven't blamed one another. Nor does the female blame the male. No, the female did not blame the male students to spark such an event, but instead the female was exhibiting an investigatory action in which she is stating something that she finds that is rightful for her to have an answer for. Moreover, the party that has been accused of doing such a wrongful act had always used we instead of you. Okay, now this is connected to the avoidance of the blame game, but in a different context. When I say in a different context, this is related to how they engage. How they engage in a conversation. What words or how good are they in analyzing the right word for them to manage a conflict. Using we instead of you is actually a good thing, since it is deviating from the increase of tension, but rather it increases or promotes the decrease of tension, since when you use the word you, essentially you're trying to accuse the person of sparking up the conflict or starting the conflict. So moving on, both of the parties have also exhibited the act of listening. Now this is seen on both parties. The male student have listened to the female student, and the female student have listened to the male student perfectly. They have synchronized to one another. They haven't let's say overlap in the way that they talk. They let someone speak first before they respond. That's a good thing, since understanding the nature of situation first before concluding to something that you don't know is actually a good thing in resolving a conflict, especially when the conflicts are as simple or as minor as this, and not as exaggerated as the other conflicts that you may see. So one of the parties have expressed a great example of taming their emotions despite the semi-aggressive intonation given by the opposing party. Now when you say intonation, is about the raising of voice, the emotion that is being represented by the voice. Now despite the male students take on the intonation, the male student remained calm. He didn't engage on also increasing the intonation, but rather he remained calm and focused on addressing the conflict in a smooth manner, rather than combating or countering what was given to him. Moving on, it is properly exhibited that both parties have been cooperative and is focused on resolving the conflicts, rather than proving to the opposing parties that they were the ones who were right. Now this is also connected to the other ones, but in a different context also. Context matters. So each and every conflict resolution techniques has their different fortes on different on different contexts. So as you may have noticed, the students weren't trying to prove that one of them is right, or one of them should emerge victorious. None of them wants to win the so-called argument or conversation. They just want to fix everything up. They just want to understand the nature of what have occurred. Moving on, one of the individuals involved in the conflict was apologetic, which happens to be me playing that role, in turn have resulted into forgiveness of both parties. Now, let's say for example, if suppose that the male student wasn't apologetic, let's say that he is full of ego and he is full of pride. Now, forgiveness wouldn't be achieved in that way, since no one would apologize and no one would lower their let's say aggression on one another. An apologetic behavior or apologizing, especially when you have done something that is let's say that is causing disturbance to other people, is a necessity in resolving conflicts. Now, during the process of resolving the conflict, one of the students has been seen to give a nonverbal communication which is primarily exhibiting affirmation. So what do you mean by nonverbal communication? It is the body language, the facial expression, the stance, and everything. Everything that does not include verbal communication. It includes the nodding of the head, for example. So, Al-Khalil bin Suwan, which is one of the presenters or actors, if you may, have exhibited this type of technique since he did not speak during the conversation, but instead he nodded his head, and his body language is showing an affirmation, meaning he is affirming towards the resolution, towards the process of resolving the conflict. So he is agreeing with what is being discussed and not objecting to the current status of the discussion. Moving on. None of them was defensive, but instead a dynamic, proper explanation and reasoning was conducted, which have lessened the intensity of conflict. Now, both of the parties have explained their sides. None of them was trying to be dominant over the other in terms of explanation. None of them were defensive because in the first place the female have asked what have happened, and the male student have humbly replied or responded to the female and have became honest on what have really happened and did not defend any of the thing that was done. Moving on, the students were a victim of a conflicting time schedule for a given room, and they have always valued and remembered the importance of student-to-student relationship, which have ended up with both parties to compromise. So, what do you mean by that? So the students have realized that they are in a common situation, let's say a situation that you may have also experienced in your lifetime, and as a student on the same university, you should have a relationship, you should have a mutual respect with one another, you should have an understanding of such situations in which you put your foot on the same shoes, in a sense that the relationship must be preserved, since it is more important than increasing the conflict itself, which is really not worth it, especially in these types of situations, which is considered to be just a minor or just a simple problem. Moving on to the last part, let's conclude the presentation. The video demonstrates how even small conflicts can arise from miscommunication or a lack of consideration for others. However, through clear communication, a willingness to take responsibility, and restorative actions, peaceful resolution can be reached. So, as you may have seen, the male students have taken responsibilities, and then they are willing to cooperate. They were responding to the female's question, and they are aiming or they are targeting to resolve the conflict that have occurred. Now, combining the three together, the three techniques, is a powerful, should we say, acceleration towards achieving peace within the conflicting parties. That's all. Thank you for listening.